The Societies portfolio here at the University of Pretoria supports various student societies on campus. It involves coordinating with units for student governance and leadership, as well as student leaders facilitating the registration as well as recognition for new societies that are set to be there on campus. In summary, or simpler terms, the Society portfolio is in charge of ensuring that there are good times and vibes that happen on campus. Good morning, I'm your host and facilitator for this debate, Tsukhofadza Makola, and welcome to the SRC election debate for the portfolio postgraduate, or rather not postgraduate, but rather society's portfolio. We just had postgraduate. And this is organized by the Elections Management and Consulting Agency of Africa. On my right, or your left, we're joined by candidates from this portfolio, all vying for your vote. Allow me to introduce our candidates. From the far left, or your far left, we have Ms. Jessica Tawane. Next to her, we have Mojalisa Matanzi, rather. And next to him, we have Gyahile Make. And next to him as well, we have Lihle Monwina. Apologies for that. Thank you so much for taking time to join us for this debate. A few ground rules before we begin, and just so that you're eased into this debate. Please ensure that you're respectful throughout the debate. No discrimination at all will be tolerated throughout this debate. A question will be asked to each and every one of you, of which you'll be given sufficient time to respond to that question, and then your candidates will have an opportunity to rebut or agree to some of the points that you've discussed and give their take on that question as well. And for time reasons, please try to keep your responses as concise as possible, and let's try our best not to interrupt one another throughout the debate, and we'll all have a chance to speak, so you don't need to interrupt each other in between. Most importantly, let's remember to have fun, and let's remember to be respectful throughout. Seems calm? You guys seem calm. Let's get right into it. I'm going to start with Jessica. The rise of AI is something that's been very important lately. A lot of people have been noticing the rise of AI in various different things that we use within, common life. And, I want to know from you, how do you envision student societies at UP adapting in terms of the use of AI within your portfolio?
Thank you for the question. I think as an information science student, one thing we did learn, especially in our first year, is how to use AI, the importance of it, and the challenges that come with it. So with societies particularly, in which we can integrate a better growing, because AI is always going to be there and it's only going to get more integrated into our society. A way that we can incorporate it with our societies is to allow the societies to encourage the correct use of AI, not just any use, but correct use, creative use that help fuel ideas instead of them just copy and pasting, copywriting issues and things like that. Where we could have an AI awareness week, and societies encourage their members, they incorporate it in what they do. For example, I know there are speech societies such as Elevate Africa or TEDx, for example, that can speak on it, use it as a topic to engage the audience that they adhere to.
Majalifa, it seems as though you've been nodding while Jessica's been speaking. Do you have anything to add to that?
Can you please repeat your question?
So looking at how AI is prevalent within society, within your portfolio, how do you think or how do you envision AI will be used within societies here at the University of Pretoria?
At the university as a whole, ne?
Yes.
Well, I would say I would create, maybe host seminars or workshops in educating for responsible use of AI and ethical use. Well, particularly helping in the students to understand the UP policy use, citation, and all the stuff in terms of the bargaining, plagiarism, the students not to plagiarize,
And just tying it back in when it comes to societies, I want to actually hear from you, in terms of what you think this can be reintegrated specifically when it comes to societies.
I believe, or rather not believe, so we all know and we are all aware that societies are different in terms of categories, right? And at the current day, age and time, like Jessica had already reiterated that we can expect for the integration of AI to be more intense and more advanced. But as far as societies like religious societies, there's really limited use in terms of that, because beliefs and also technology really do not go well together like that. And I would say that rather, if we get the integration of AI literacy in the mainstream curriculum, understanding that societies are an extracurricular, right? If you learn something in the classroom and you have a practical place that you can apply it, then societies would be a great place to start, because there's also academic societies, and that would be mandatory then for people to be aware of the fact that they should be AI literate. Also knowing that the library services also offer sessions and workshops on that. I feel collaboration would be the best way to go about it, to ensure that students have the opportunity and those that want to engage with it do, because at the end of the day, you cannot force everyone to do something that they don't want. Because if they really cannot see the need or the direct use or the direction of how AI would be integrated into that particular society, then they wouldn't participate. But I believe there's certain societies that would really need that, like academic ones, and then for religious ones, it would be more of a personal interest more than anything.
And I think, Lisa, you mentioned something incredibly important, which is beliefs, right? A lot of societies are belief-based societies. And I want to probe Gerhile on something about that. You know, given our very polarized social environment that we have within society, how would you, as a society representative or a head of this portfolio, foster an environment where student organizations encourage open dialogue, constructive debate, and critical engagement with diverse perspectives?
Thank you very much for the question. Obviously, with regards to, excuse me, them being inside of society cannot supersede the contractual agreement with the university, right? But this should not mean that certain discourses should not take part. Every society has their differing views, their differing beliefs, and those beliefs might not be in one or aligned with each other, but it should not mean that they should go to an extent whereby conflict should be expanded upon, where you fight with one another to a point where you're not willing to even speak to me, and that is a very exclusionary thing to do, activity to engage in. So how I would particularly look into that is by obviously hosting sessions whereby outside of just having those type of discourses, maybe getting to know them on a personal level is something that we could also do. Because if you know me as someone closer, you'd have some sort of mindset, no, at times I am able to see you as a person outside of your affiliation. And that's what's mainly important, because we think about the spirit of Ubuntu, we think about the spirit of the religious acts whereby it is very engaged that we see you see your neighbor as a person before you see them with their affiliations. Thank you.
I see Jessica nodding quite a bit at some of the things that you've said. Jessica, do you have something to add or something to counter?
No, not necessarily. I think the points that you've made are very important, especially the points about Ubuntu, what our country is based off of, coming together as one. So I really, I don't have any contests, only agreeing with your points.
Mojalefa, I want you to, give us a bit of context. We know that many student societies rely on a very vibrant campus in order to thrive. In your capacity, if you had to be elected as, head of this portfolio of societies, how would you still cultivate an environment where societies are able to create that vibe on campus?
Thank you for the question. Well, firstly, I would create something like an online collaborating thing, whereby it will be an online thing, like campuses like the one like Odensbrod. Most of the time, student societies are not mainly there, but we'll create something like online so that we can work with all the students. Well, another thing we can do is, in the Groenkloof campus, I would ensure that societies host an event throughout every maybe quarter, 2 times a quarter, to ensure that all the campuses are vibrant and all the campuses are recognized.
And Lihle, I want to probe you on that. He's speaking about the vibe that should be created on campus. Students' life and academic balance is a big issue that happens here at the University of Pretoria. How would you, as head of societies, ensure that societies don't hinder on students, right or their privilege to education here on campus?
That is a very important point to also talk about. One of the struggles that are hardly ever spoken about are the struggle of student leadership and the challenges that come with that, also kind of affecting academics. And I would say the biggest thing to that is balance. However, the challenge with that is that a lot of people would learn how to balance, life and the whole leadership thing and school in different ways. But I feel as though it's very important and it's imperative that young people learn the art of balance now in university as opposed to when they're older, because the biggest challenge is then how are you going to be able to tackle being a head of a household or having your own house, your own family, having to go to work and also be a social person with your friends. I believe the University of Pretoria has a very great stance in student life and student support specifically. I currently work for the student counseling unit as well. These are things that a lot of students really do not know about, and there's also quite a bit of stigma around. And in my term, what I would encourage is for student leaders to always understand the fact that they're not alone. I mean, I also struggle all of the time, it comes with the package, but also when you learn to manage it easier, or the earlier you start on, the better it becomes as you go on. So I feel as though the balance to it, and also going to these structures that offer support services to the student leaders, then we'll put our students in a position where they are bound to succeed while having extracurriculars.
And you're talking about balance. I want us to shift focus in terms of the balance of finances, because sure, societies thrive because people are aware of these societies, but they also thrive when their budgets are managed well. This has been a big issue specifically at the University of Pretoria, with some societies not actually lasting long because some of their budgets have not necessarily been upheld. I want you to pass the mic to Garhile, and I want to hear from you in terms of, if you were elected into this portfolio, how will you ensure that societies manage their budgets well in order to allow for their smooth running?
Previously I've ran in the House Humanities and I've served as the treasurer, so that also allowed me to have some sort of experience. And the treasury is not an easy portfolio as it might seem and come off to be. People might think, it's just managing money, and then you think, like life just continues like that. No, I think here the most important thing that we can engage on is establishing a treasury subcommittee, mainly working with the treasurer's office, so that it doesn't somewhat excuse me, just have some flu, but it does not necessarily conflict with offices, whereby my duty is to look into the societies, but equally with that, having a society's treasury committee, they get to on an intimate level engage with societies and their needs in terms of funding, in terms of also getting club funds to account for those funds, because a lot of the time societies do mention that they are registered as societies, but club funds is taking long for them to, get their funds and whatnot. So maybe having that sort of structure would allow us to at least see the fast tracking of those type of funding allocations, as well as having club funds being held accountable for not being able to issue out those funds and whatnot. Thank you.
Majalifa, you seem to be quite engaged in terms of what Garhile has just had to say regarding, the relationship that societies have to have when it comes to treasury. What's your take on that, and how will you facilitate that relationship, knowing that it should go well between societies and treasury?
Well, firstly, I would create maybe a workshop first at the beginning of the term, between the treasury and the societies, in order for them to be able to know how to work around the fiscal framework, so that we don't find ourselves whereby we overspend. Again, I would say, I think there's a need for the increasement in terms of the funds of the society, so that the society can thrive. Because of the current, I think this thing of maybe they say you register 60 students, whereby you'll get something like 4,000 rand. I think that's not enough to run the society. The society needs a lot of funding in order for them to operate well.
And you've raised something about funding, and Jessica's nodding quite a bit. Jessica, do you have any insights in terms of how society should be getting funding if you were elected into this portfolio?
If we were to completely ignore the fact that they already get funding from the school themselves, I think an important part is to mention the skills that the students hold. Because most of the time we come to university to learn how to get a job, how to work in the job we want, and not necessarily how to be entrepreneurs and use the skills that we have before we even get the job, or when there's no jobs that we ever studied for. So I think allowing societies to integrate their skills to grow their entrepreneurship, maybe people crochet, for example, and they can use that within their societies, outside of their societies, to raise money for what they do. Outreach programs, of course, we can integrate funding from sponsors, because NGOs just love to be charitable. So why not take advantage of that so that they are not hindered what they're doing for the students and for those outside of university. They're not hindered because of simple funds.
I see, Lisha, you're nodding quite a bit. Do you have something to add to that?
I think the biggest challenge with funding specifically, right, is the time frame. According to what I've been able to monitor, right, you'll find that societies get their funds a bit later than they should. And this now leaves societies in a position where they really just now doing events, is just doing them so that they can submit to the SRC Society's officer the feedback managerial report that they should submit annually. And I believe the biggest challenge is not the fact that there's no money. The institution has the money. And also there's things like Project Pool, it's just a matter of keeping the momentum going. If we're going to have marketing week in the beginning of the year, like the first week like we did this year, then best believe we should have the funds by the end of March at least. Because then what that does, it puts the treasurers in a position of comfortability in the portfolio. Because trust and believe, I can never do well in a position where I'm not comfortable. I feel as though I have no duty, no one is supporting me, etc., etc. And when you're going to have an SRC Society's officer as accessible and proactive like myself, I will be that support to hold your hand to make sure that you're going to get the funds. Because I believe if one society is not getting funds, then all of them shouldn't. Because then what does it say to one society that, okay, they are able to function and then this society cannot, and then it builds this notion of favoritism when it really does not exist. There's other issues that affect that, and I believe with what Jessica had said is that, through collaboration more than anything, because sponsorships are kind of complex to navigate, especially considering UP policies and things like that. I feel the familiarization of student leaders in societies knowing their vendors, knowing how they charge and how they should go about things, will put them in a position where the funds are going to be allocated, used well, and then the functionality is going to be successful. And when you have societies like Empowerment Care, who are very proactive in getting sponsorships and everything outside, and then you find a society that's still starting off, if you're going to build that collaboration between those two, then we're putting UP at the map, and we're also pushing for productivity within. So yeah, that's my take on that.
I think you've raised a lot of important points, one of them being favoritism, and another one being, market week that happens at the beginning of the year, and then afterwards, it's almost as if the society's SRC member disappears.
Yeah.
Seems like Keogile has a lot to add on that. Can you pass on the mic?
No, thank you very much. What Lihle had said to us right now was very important, whereby already long-established society would always find ways to live on, whereby, and as well as like a new society would find it challenging to maintain that structure and have like a program, not even a program, just like a everlasting existence within the university. And this should be countered by having as well as a longevity program, whereby you also go and speak to these new established societies, you bring them together and they can pick up what to learn from one another. Society is not just one thing. you're one structure, we cannot engage with you, maybe you have different views. No, we can come together and offer advice to every society and be like, look, from our experience, this is how we go about certain things. Maybe you can take that and incorporate it into your society and have, by then, it would probably allow you to look at certain aspects within your own society that you can reflect, correct, and you are able to exist within the university for a longer time.
I'd like to pass the mic to Mojalefa. You know, Keogile just mentioned something incredibly important that was also echoed by Lihle regarding collaboration, right, between societies. I want us to look at the collaboration between societies and the society's officer, right? Something that Lihle mentioned a bit earlier on is the fact that the society's officer is there at the beginning of the year to make sure that the market day is up and running, but then throughout the year, it's almost as if the society's officer kind of disappears. How would you ensure, if you were elected in this portfolio, that there'd be a level of consistency with the society's officer and the society's portfolio?
Well, thank you very much for the question. To ensure that there's consistency, I think I would host meetings, I think in a quarter 2 times, in order to ensure that all the society are I'm collaborating with all the societies that are there. Well, in terms of the society collaborations, I cannot enforce the collaboration amongst themselves. Remember that there are different societies. There are cultural, education, and sometimes there are political societies whereby they differ amongst their constitution that they cannot collaborate. But in terms of that, I'll create a working space whereby all of us will be able to have one ground whereby we understand one another. And to ensure that there's consistency in terms of this, as I said, that I would ensure that in a semester or in a quarter, maybe there are meetings and yeah, something like that.
I see Jessica nodding quite a bit. Jessica, do you have something to add?
Just to agree with your point of meetings, because you can't really communicate if you don't speak to the societies themselves and open that dialogue between them. Something I'd like to add on is just having a constant form of communication and availing myself, because that's one thing that I tend to do a lot, is avail myself, make sure that people are okay, and ensuring that there's an open dialogue between the societies and the society's SRC member is very important. Whether it doesn't seem like you can't actually see it physically, as long as it is happening, and there are records, meeting records to say that this is what has happened, this is what has discussed, and that the SRC society's person continues and is actively working towards it, and you can see the results, then I think the open dialogue will be the best way to move forward.
I'm seeing a lot of agreeing between you four, but I think most candidates want to know why they should pick you specifically. I'm going to give you each an opportunity to give a bit of your parting shot to the the student body to kind of know why they should specifically vote for you on Wednesday. I'm going to start with you, Jessica.
So why I'd be a good candidate for the society's SRC? Let me start by saying that society, another word for society is community, something that we should thrive to be. And I believe that I can foster a good community, a good society between each of us, because even though we may be individual societies, we are still one UP. And to ensure that every person is seen, is heard in the society, as a society EC, and to make sure that there's no more discrimination, there is complete diversity and communication and timely managed funds, as well as event, and there goes the word, event confirmations, as well as the location where you're going to hold the event.
I'd like you to pass the mic over to Mojalefa. Why should students vote for you on Wednesday?
Thank you very much. To the student populace of the University of Pretoria, they must vote for Mojalefa Matonsi for societies. I would ensure that the funds increment are there in the societies, and I would ensure that there's no societies that is left out. And I would ensure that I would collaborate fully and participate fully with all the societies. But firstly, I would like to touch this to all societies that lives in the University of Pretoria who will be watching this debate session, that I would ensure that I would increase the funds of the society 2 times, because I know the struggle that we have in that thing of societies. So students, please vote for me.
And Gaukile, why should students vote for you in this SRC election on Wednesday?
Thank you very much. This is not about me, it's not about us, but it's about the whole of the UP student life body and students all together. Societies should not only be about having to go about our own events, but as well as engaging with one another to tell each other that, look, we are here for one another, we can have a good life together regardless of our differences. And for voting for Gwagile and voting for SASCO, you are able to engage in that type of discourse. And I say to you today that vote for SASCO and vote for Gwagile Make for the portfolio of societies. Thank you.
And lastly, Lihle, why should students vote for you in our SRC election for the portfolio societies?
As an individual who has extensive experience within the society's paradigm, I'm ready to serve you. I'm ready to show you what societies really have to be like. I am doing this so that the introvert that only comes to campus for class and goes back to res to go and have the rest of their day knows that there's extracurriculars that you can participate in regardless of your faculty, your race, your gender, any of those things that really do not matter. I am ready to serve you, and servitude is what I strive in. Vote for an accessible, proactive, and a leader with an open mind. Hashtag pursuing society's excellence with Lihle. Hashtag free education in a lifetime. Remember the name, remember the face. Lihle Mangana for Societies 2026. Thank you.
Jessica Mujalefa, Lihle, as well as Gwagile, thank you so much for taking time to join us for this debate session for the portfolio societies. A reminder that SRC elections officially kick off on Wednesday. Be sure to make your mark, be sure to make your vote on that day.